It's day 2 of the 12 days of tools of the trade, and today I'm going to be talking about measuring tools. That's why I'm wearing my fabulous measuring tape necklace like they do on Project Runway. So first I do want to talk about the measuring tape. It's crucial to any seamstress or designer. It's a tape, a ribbon with markings on it. Mine is only the imperial system, only inches, but you can get some that have inches on one side, centimeters on the other. And these are super crucial for measuring things that aren't straight, which is most things in sewing. If you want to measure around a neckline to figure out how big a collar needs to be, or if you want to measure from, well, I guess that's actually pretty straight, from armpit to wrist. Don't know why you'd do that. But if you had to measure the armhole size, or if you need to measure your own measurements, those are all done using a measuring tape. Not to be confused with a tape measure, which is an entirely different thing. It is similar, you think, but it's metal. You probably know what a tape measure is, primarily used in construction or building things. Helpful in a lot of instances, not so much in sewing because of how rigid it is. But a measuring tape measure, now I can't remember which one's which, is super duper helpful, and you should definitely invest in one if you don't have one yet, and they make a stylish necklace. Okay, next. Straight edges. Definitely gonna want some straight edges around. I always like my straight edges to be out of metal for a number of reasons. One, they're more durable. And they seem to be straighter. A lot of wooden ones I get tend to have warped edges. They'll have like a little bubble somewhere, whereas this guy, whoop, perfectly straight. I'm also more confident that this angle is 90 degrees for when I'm marking and I need to make sure that I'm being perpendicular. I also love that this one, my shorter one that's 18 inches, has a cork back, which means it doesn't slide around. Super duper helpful. This one doesn't. I wish it did, but I had to work with what Walmart could give me. They were about $4 each at Walmart. This one was $4 because it's long. This one's $4 because it has a cork back. But they're very, very handy to have around. Lots of straight edges in sewing and for marking of darts and pleats and things like that. So there's straight edges. Next, we have this. I call it a hip ruler. I don't know if it has an actual name, but it does a lot more than measure hips. So I wish I could put it on like a background so you could tell what was going on. I found a piece of paper. So this is called a styling design ruler, and it has a lot of really helpful things on it. It's curved along one edge, which all the curves do something. So if you can read right there, it says for the armhole curves, use from there to there, and a little bit farther down right there, it says for hip curves, use from there to there. So this is great if you need to adjust the size of an armhole or add some ease into some pants for your hips. It's also got the straight edge going down the center, so you can still use it there. It's clear, so you can see other markings through it, which is really, really nice. For pattern drafting, it's a must. I have to have my curved ruler. Okay, now we get to my favorite of all the measuring devices. Are you ready? Are you ready? Ba-na-na-na. The seam gauge, the small but very powerful tool that every costumer and sewer should have. It's just this little metal guy, little slider. Look at him, little slider. And this is priceless. It just makes measuring easier. It does essentially the same job as the straight edge, but it makes your brain have to work less. Because if I want to draw a 5/8 seam on something and I'm using a straight edge, I need to find 5/8 on my ruler, and then I'd need to line it up, okay, mark, line it up, mark. This takes the thinking out for you. Just line the slider up with 5/8 or wherever you want to mark. Just place the blue against the edge of your fabric. You don't even have to think about the fact that it was 5/8 because you know it is because you marked it that way. Put it down, mark, put it down, mark, put it down, mark. No more lining up or wasting time. You do have to be careful if it's pretty bendable. I don't want to bend it because if it loses its rigidity, this slider can lose friction, and then it will move freely around and it gets kind of pointless. I've had a few of them that I've like stepped on and then I've had to throw them away because I can't ever quite bend them back how they need to be. Luckily they're pretty cheap. I usually have 5 of them at all times because I also lose them a lot. But they're so helpful. Seam gauge, my favorite thing, especially if if you think about Hagar's applique, it was just a lot of straight lines. I used this to measure it out to make sure all those lines were a consistent length. Okay, the last measuring tool I want to show you, we actually have to go on a little field trip for. Excuse the mess, I'm in the middle of making a hoop skirt, but this is my cutting board. Now I'm going to get more into cutting tools in tomorrow's episode, day 3, but I want to show you this because it's also an excellent measurement tool. Now my board is unusually large. It's about 6 feet tall by 3 feet wide-ish. And usually they're more like 2 feet by 3 feet. They're usually 1/3, so from about here to here. I got a monster one because I was tired of having to slide my big fabric pieces around while I was cutting them up. So I love this because I can cut out big fabric pieces without having to shift things around. But this is why it's an excellent measurement tool. You see all these lines? They're very helpful. And if we get in here in the corner, these are great because they will tell you different angles. So if you need to make a 30-degree cut, 45-degree cut, 60-degree cut, and in here, see these lines? These are really nice. We've got 2 inches wide, 4 inches wide, 3 inches wide. Do you know what these lines are for? These are bias tape lines. They run at a 45-degree angle, so if you lay your fabric on here and cut along these lines, you will be making bias tape of these widths. It's awesome! And every one of these squares is 1 inch square. So a lot of times you can just line up your edge of the fabric right here, and if you need a bunch of strips, slide it over, cut right down the line. When you get on the edges, they're marked more detailed. A lot of times I will just take my straight edge and I'd be like, okay, this is 60, and I'd put my other straight edge at the other end, 60, lay my fabric down and slice right across. So these are an excellent tool. These smaller ones usually don't have quite as complicated a markings because you can see that it's actually 3 boards that have been clamped together. They're built specifically to clamp together. You can't just clamp together normal boards. And you can see like these bias tape lines run onto another board. The smaller boards don't usually have as detailed a marking, but they do still have marking systems, and they're very, very helpful for making measurements in your designs. So I hope that was helpful looking at all the different marking tools. If you have any questions or comments, please leave one for me. And in the meantime, happy crafting!